Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer. Coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. Hello, Shrubby Buddies and podcast world, and welcome to this week's episode of Shrubby Buddies podcast. I am Matt Guthrie, joined with Timmy Fleischer over here to my right. And
Hi, Matt.
Yeah, we've got a special episode for you all today that we're really excited about. So, first we'll just kind of talk about where we're at. We're at the 2024 PPA, Perennial Plant Association's National Symposium in
beautiful Asheville, North
Carolina. So, it's been kind of rainy and cloudy and drizzly the past couple of days, but we've had fun, done some really cool garden tours yesterday, had some good food last night, had some good drinks, talked with some good people. So, yeah.
The only thing the rain has stopped us from doing is stepping foot outside on the rooftop bar, but it's not gotten in the way of any of our tours. So,
no.
And it's done a nice job of like cutting through the heat. So bring the rain, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tim, do you want to... We'll just get into this. You want to introduce the wonderful guest that we have with us today?
Yes. So today we are interviewing my favorite influential and energetic force in the green industry, Brie Arthur. How's it going, Brie?
It's great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
Such a joy.
Yeah, we had like a list that we were gonna of all these different names. We were gonna give you like what?
Brie Arthur, aka Brie the Plant Lady, aka
Brie the
Cat Lady,
Brie the YouTube extraordinaire, Brie the, I don't know.
Yeah, we had a big
Foodscape
list.
Revolutionary lady. So,
Woo!
yeah. So, yeah, we'll just get right into this little talk with Brie here. Yeah, you want to start off, Tim?
Yeah, so I met Brie for the first time at PPA Denver how many years ago would you say that was, Brie?
I think that was 17.
17, so 7 years ago?
7 years ago.
Yeah, and you spoke at that one, didn't you?
I did.
And that was when I first met you. And like I said in my opening, you were just a breath of fresh air with this like energetic youthfulness to you towards gardening. You know, there's a lot of staleness in our industry sometimes, and I just think that what Matt and I are trying to do in this podcast is reach, all kinds of different people. And I think you're the perfect guest to have on today. So
thank you.
Thank you for being here.
My enthusiasm is genuine.
Yeah, we know it.
My whole world revolves around horticulture.
Yeah.
I always laugh because it's like, well, don't ask me about sports, but you want to talk plants all day long.
Yep.
You know.
And that's fantastic. So,
yeah,
I mean, we love talking about plants. So
every time I open up my Instagram, you're kind of at the top there. You post a lot, and there's just wonderful things.
We're in butterfly season right now.
Yes,
so I
know.
don't have
You
to
had
work
like
very hard. I just walk outside and there's like 100 butterflies.
That's awesome.
This is why you garden. This is what the suburbs should look like.
And lately you've been posting the tomato tastings, which I drool over because I just started harvesting my gin fizz is what I grew this year. It was my big special one and so delicious. And I look at your spreads of tomatoes and those look so good, and you've got the bacon out and the lettuce, and you're making sandwiches, I assume.
It's funny, I call it a tomato tasting, but they really do become bacon parties.
Yeah.
But we've had an extraordinary year in North Carolina for tomatoes. It was terrible. We didn't have any rain all of May, all of June. It was like I was really questioning what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah.
But the tomatoes loved it. They loved it. Didn't have any disease issues. And this year I have so many. Y'all need to come up. I brought tomatoes with me.
Oh,
to
did you
PPA.
really?
Oh. So I can give you a tomato tasting
Awesome.
today.
That's great.
Yeah, we'll be there.
That's fantastic. So,
Yeah, let's learn a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit about you. We've read some stuff about you, obviously, originally from Michigan.
Yes, I grew up in southeastern Michigan.
Like the Detroit area or
about
Ann Arbor?
an hour south of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Close to Ann Arbor, really closer to Toledo. Ohio.
Okay, yeah. So we're from Ohio, and his wife is from the
Toledo area.
Oh. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time up in northern Michigan. I've got my family, my brother's got property up there, so we spend a ton of time up there hanging out, like the Traverse City area, Torch Lake area.
It's a beautiful state.
Yeah.
So wonderful.
I love the state of Michigan. So
Well, I love the state of Michigan in the summer.
yeah.
It's
Not so much in the winter.
delightful.
Yeah.
I mean, I did very conscientiously move from the Midwest to North Carolina 22 years ago.
Okay.
It's because I didn't want to be involved in snow removal.
Yeah.
I wanted to grow plants 12 months out of the
Yeah,
year.
that's awesome.
Zone 7, which we've now transitioned to Zone 8, is a pretty amazing place botanically speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keeps you occupied.
Sure,
Yeah,
lots
absolutely.
of diversity.
So, and Purdue grad?
Yes, I went to Purdue, and really I got my start in horticulture because of 4-H.
Okay, yeah.
We were the non-farmers in the 4-H group, so
Yeah.
to keep up with all my friends, I needed to grow vegetables
Oh,
and
yeah.
flowers to enter into the county fair.
So you can hang out at the fair and have something to do.
Exactly.
Yep. No, I get it. I did. I grew up kind of in like a farming community. So, it was like all of my friends did the like cattle and stuff like that. And I kind of got into showing some livestock. But yeah, nothing to the extent that they did. But I never really got into the entering plant stuff. That didn't, like my love for horticulture didn't come until more towards like the end of my high school days or whatever. I started working at a local garden center, and that's kind of what spurred it for me. I was like, wow, like plants, this is where it's at. So yeah.
There's no better job. There's no better hobby. Like, I really try to say this as often as possible, but there's no better contribution to this planet and to your community than to be a gardener.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Everything you do makes a positive difference. There's not a lot of careers where you can say that and it be so accurate. We're
Yeah.
so fortunate to work in horticulture.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And what I love about it too is like when you create these spaces for people, because we're public horticulturists, so creating the spaces for people, and then what does it for me is the reaction that I get from them, the compliments, and then like maybe it's just passing by like a garden that I like created and seeing people in there with cameras taking photos and kids like looking for insects and chasing after butterflies. And that to me is like the most satisfying part of all of it. It's like, okay, like I'm doing something right here. And that's what drives me to keep going.
It's the same for me too. When the most flattering thing is when I see someone take a selfie in front of the pots that I've created in the downtown area where we work, because it's like they can choose a lot of things as a backdrop, but they chose those flowers. So that's my favorite. That's the most rewarding bit.
I do an open garden twice a year just so I can see the yard full of people enjoying the effort that I've put forth. It's
absolutely.
the greatest vision. Like I sometimes hide in my kitchen and just watch
them.
through the window.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, but it's like, that's why you garden. It's to share it with people and get them inspired by the time and effort that you put.
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely. So, all right. So from Michigan, graduate of Purdue, author of a couple of best-selling books, Foodscape Revolution and Gardening with Grains, right? Yeah. So, So,
did you want to tell us a little bit about each of those books?
I would love to.
Yeah.
They were sort of born really out of necessity. I, garden in the suburbs with an HOA. And early in my days of being a home gardener, had run into an issue growing vegetables in my front yard.
Okay, yeah.
And had a run-in with my HOA and was too poor to fight them.
Yeah.
So I joined them. I got on the board, and I could start to understand where some of their problems with landscape appropriations were coming from. And so it gave me a better perspective, because initially I was just mad and like had a chip on my shoulder, like, who are these people? They don't even have any understanding of horticulture, and they're making these decisions. Getting in and seeing and getting that full perspective was really helpful, and that's actually what led me to write the Foodscape Revolution, because once I realized that you could pair the vegetables with ornamentals instead of having a segregated vegetable plot.
Yeah.
Your neighbors don't know that you're growing the vegetables, and you're growing them in plain sight, but no one's offended. You can also rotate the crops more efficiently. You have more available square footage, and you can take advantage of different sun patterns at different times of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, as neighborhoods now, the properties are smaller, you have less opportunity to even have like raised beds.
Yeah.
But the power of the landscape is really its untapped potential.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got into writing the grains book, it was really more about soil improvement, using plants for their biomass, for their roots, bringing in nitrogen fixers to make it so that that horrible soil that the developers have left you with, you can fix it in a really short amount of time and not being so expensive. You're not having to bring in off-site substrates. You're using the plants to your advantage to improve the soil naturally.
And some of those grains are, beautiful too, right?
Yeah.
They're the most exquisite plants. Really, my life changed so dramatically in 2014 when a dear friend who actually teaches agriculture at App State in Boone, North Carolina, handed me my first pack of wheat seeds.
Yeah.
I was like, grow this. You've never grown wheat before. And my life changed so much in that season, and I became completely obsessed with grains. And I currently I have rice growing in shocking places, like in pots with no drainage holes in my driveway.
Yeah.
And everyone who visits is just like, wait, you can grow rice in your driveway? And,
you're like, yeah.
That's part of the goal with both of the books, but especially with the grain book, because most people haven't grown grains, but we all eat it. Whether you eat the grains directly, you eat animals that are fed grains.
Correct.
Grains are a part of everyone's life. But to grow them in a way that it's not like you're not going to the grocery store. You're still buying flour.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
You can have a pot of wheat that grows all winter, and it's really beautiful and dynamic, and then the birds can eat the seed.
Yeah.
So there's I want people to think literally outside of the box. That was really the goal with the books, is to think more dynamically about how seasonal, annuals, vegetables, perennials, trees, shrubs can all be merged together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because, the two things I just harvested at home were potatoes and onions. And let's face it, by the time it's harvest time for those things, they're not good-looking plants.
No.
Potatoes, when they bloom, those blooms are charming. And when the onions are sticking straight up and they're bright green, that's nice. But having rows of potatoes and onions in front of your house, I can understand why that wouldn't be something that maybe your neighbors in the HOA would want to look at.
It's exactly true. Really, I think we've been trained, maybe unconsciously, to try and mimic agriculture with the way we grow vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not using a machine to plant and to harvest, you don't have to grow in straight lines.
Right.
You can give yourself permission to plant in pentagons.
Yeah.
Like in any shape or form you want. And the ornamental plants really, I think they make a big difference in getting better pollination, getting better diversity of insects. So if you have pests on your vegetables, the ornamentals bring in beneficial insects that might eat those pests. And you're not having to apply any sort of insecticide. You're being able to be a bit more hands-off. You're utilizing the diversity of the ornamental palette. And then when those vegetables are ugly, the ornamentals overcompensate.
Yeah.
They're
stealing the show at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always laugh because when I was originally awarded Yard of the Year after I created my first home foodscape.
Nice.
And they were like, what are these beautiful leafy greens with these green flowers? And I'm like, it's broccoli. It looks exactly like what you buy at the grocery store.
Yeah.
But because they were planted next to hydrangeas, and
their brains
knockout
weren't
roses,
going to broccoli.
Yeah.
They couldn't be. And I just remember thinking, we have a long way. We have a lot of job security in getting people to be more aware of plants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend that does. He grows a lot of vegetables. He's got some beautiful, beautiful gardens around. He has a historic home in the town that I live in Ohio, and his gardens are beautiful. But he mixes in a lot of tomatoes and peppers and different things through his garden, and he does it to bring food in, obviously for cooking and stuff. But also he spends so much time in the garden. He's like, man, sometimes it's nice to just like, you're pulling weeds and it's like, oh, there's a cucumber, and you pull it off the vine and you eat a cucumber, you know. He's like, it's just little snacks scattered about the garden, you know. So,
shout out to Donald Berger.
Yeah, so Donald does that, and yeah, so that's a reason he does it. What I think's fantastic about it is, in a world where you know, we're faced with hunger, right? We're fortunate to not have that issue, but you know, I think having that roadmap for people like, hey, as we move into these times where food's going to become an issue, like, here's how you can grow it on your own property. It doesn't have to be these like mega farms that are doing it. It could be like small community gardens, or just providing for your family right there, you know, around your house in a like aesthetically pleasing way. So,
and I mean, food insecurity is a part of every community.
Yeah.
We are fortunate in that, like, it's not our day-to-day life, but the power of the suburbs. We've got sun, irrigation, and a lot of space.
Tons of space.
Sprawling suburbs. And,
yeah.
you know, one of the times, I think, when I grew that wheat for the first time, and we harvested 20 pounds of ground flour from an 850 square foot bed in the middle of my front lawn.
Yeah.
That had been turf that we were mowing, that, you know, we cut the turf out and built this bed that's similar to the serpentine border at Chanticleer. That was my inspiration.
Your inspiration. Wonderful.
And, you know, when we harvested that, we had a school group come, a bunch of second graders came, hand harvested, we threshed and winnowed. They made bread from it, you know.
Oh, that's
this
awesome.
Transformative experience. Then I started thinking, like, everyone in my neighborhood has 850 square feet of turf that could be transformed for this beautiful installation. But in my neighborhood alone, we could be harvesting thousands of pounds of local organic flour to go to our bakery.
Yeah.
So then the next year I did barley, and that blew my mind, because then I'm like, our local breweries aren't really using local ingredients.
Yeah.
We have the capacity to change this by thinking differently about what we do with turf. We have so much turf, and I'm never saying no turf, just saying reduce the amount of turf and use some of that square footage to do something that would actually support your community.
Yeah, to be beneficial to the community and to the environment and everything else, you know.
And it's
so
beautiful.
And it's beautiful.
Barley is the most beautiful plant I have ever grown. I call it the beauty queen in the book, and everyone who sees it immediately falls in love. Like, and you know, it's a cool season annual, so it grows all winter when everything else is dormant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in the spring when it flowers, it's I don't understand why it's not just part of the ornamental grass lineup.
Yeah.
You know.
As it should be. So
There's my
very
shout
cool.
out. Grains are awesome, everybody.
I like that. We've
And
been
they're really inexpensive, and they grow from seed. But,
Yeah,
you know,
and you can do
it's-
something with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Matt and I have really gotten back into the ornamental grass game, mostly native ones, and I like hearing that. It's something else for our tool bag.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, because most of our ornamental grasses are warm season active, so they're brown. Often they're cut down for the winter. So the cool season grains compensate.
Yeah.
I grow them typically in clumps. That way they look just like an ornamental grass, but it's a grass you can eat. Grains are grass. They're all in the poaceae.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Something you just mentioned a few minutes ago was when you had grown all that wheat, I believe, you had a field trip come by and help you out. And that's kind of a theme that when I see you on Instagram, you always have a lot of youth around in your gardens helping. I know that when we saw you at Cultivate a few weeks ago, Aiden was with you. So could you tell us more about, because Matt and I kind of had an episode about this where just like getting family and things involved in gardening, how you've been able to get the kids in your community, you know, to buy in to gardening.
It helps when you're not their parent.
Yeah,
So
okay.
number one, acknowledgement. I'm the cool, crazy garden lady that all the kids in the neighborhood want to come and hang out with. Okay. And I love it because I love child labor in a fun way, not in a detrimental way. But, you know, my mom was a teacher, and I get a lot of my natural enthusiasm. That is her personality. And so when I was really reaching out on my own, when I left my nursery job and started my business, I was really determined the only way we're going to have a bright future is for kids to be introduced to growing plants young, so that they're not intimidated by it when they're 30 or 40.
Yeah.
And they're actually getting into the market of buying plants. And we've had several generations, which we're a part of, where horticulture education wasn't integrated into our schools.
Yeah.
And so very early on, I got involved with a nonprofit based out of New Jersey called the Bullet Garden Project. And it was a group of 6 horticulture professionals from around the country. And we would help fundraise with communities and build gardens in schools that then had curriculum attached to their STEM and STEAM programs.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it would really encourage the teachers to use the garden as part of their education.
Yeah.
And as a result of doing that, I was like, well, I can do this at home. I can bring this to the schools that I live near, and I can get those schools to come to me where I have a bigger living laboratory that I can experiment with more because I'm not having to coordinate with grounds maintenance.
Yeah.
I will say the thing with school gardening, the biggest challenge is that the schools are out for the summer, and you have a grounds crew that are trained to be efficient economically because this is tax dollars at work, but they're there to mow, blow, and spray some weeds.
Yeah.
And the gardens add a much more complicated element. So I can see how many school gardens don't function as well. So having somebody like me that can be a field trip opportunity for those classes to take advantage of, there's a lot of opportunity to expand that program. I love having the yard full of people, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
It's why I exist. And when I get those school groups out, we get so much accomplished so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, I frequently have a group of like 35 eighth graders. They come twice a year. In one day, they accomplish what it would take me to do in a month. It's so remarkable. So you actually do have to be very well coordinated, and you have to have everything planned out because they are so capable and ready and willing. And now that we've been doing this for almost 10 years, a lot of the kids that come back and they're like, oh yeah, I do this at home now. And
That's fantastic.
Even if they're not studying horticulture, they've got this background. So they have confidence in their ability to grow. When you're successful doing something when you're 10, you're going to be a lot less afraid to retry it when you're 30.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Now, like with Aiden, for example, I know, have you had youth that have helped you out and stuff that you inspired to go into like the green industry and like pursue further education in horticulture or landscape design or whatever it may be?
Well, Aiden's definitely my first and most devoted.
Okay.
He's been my lead garden helper
Yeah,
for
I
11
gotcha.
years.
Yeah, he's been around a while.
Yeah.
11 years. He started when he was 6 with potatoes.
Nice.
Potatoes were the gateway.
Potatoes are fun.
And he was growing French fries.
Yeah.
Because he's like, the only vegetable
so
I
cute.
eat are French fries.
French fries, you're like, perfect.
I'm like, that's fine.
Let's grow you French
that's
fries.
an easy one we can do. And it's really exciting. He's 17. He runs a lawn mowing business.
Okay.
He's just
Very driven,
reached
it
out
sounds
to
like.
do some landscape services for people locally. He's definitely driven.
Yeah.
Wants to study horticulture in college. And,
Oh, wonderful.
and
That's
create
great.
a business. So I'm hopeful because I have a whole team of new young kids coming up. And, I keep explaining to some of them, like, it's not just about the plant side of it. Like, there's so many opportunities in this industry. You can be in marketing and communications, or you can be mechanical. There's so much beyond just like the growing of plants or the installation of landscapes. It's a very broad, diverse industry. So there's an opportunity for everyone.
Yeah.
The girl Callie across the street, who I adore, is the most talented photographer. She's only 10, and she uses the real camera.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Through the lens, and gets everything perfectly. It's so remarkable to see the garden through her view, and she always photographs the open gardens, so pictures of plants and people. She is just,
That's
so
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah.
I'm always like, you can still be in horticulture and be a photographer.
Yeah.
sure.
I mean,
So-
look at, I've drawn a blank now, but I mean, there's books now that like Pete Oldoff and trying to think of the photographer's name now that's photographed his work and has created a whole book of it. It's called At Work.
The one I got Megan.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
her
you know,
birthday.
and
yeah.
There you go. Plant photographer.
Like Rob Cardillo
Yeah.
is a great example of, I think, probably the best, certainly one of the best American garden photographers. And if you get like the book on Chanticleer, he did all the
All of it.
photography for that. And he's a shining example of like, he's a gardener himself, but his career is photographing other people's gardens.
And
Yeah.
and like all the insects and wildlife and hummingbirds and things in the garden, those just kind of overlap with
Yes.
with all that, and they're so photogenic.
We have a coworker who, his name's Jay, and he kind of got his start in horticulture. So he's an artist, photographer, and just like illustrator. He's just an artist.
And he
that's
came in
his
as a
background.
seasonal when he was fairly young.
Yeah.
When he was just like in college, and
He found that like horticulture was like his
the link.
like the link for his way of like expressing his artistic, mind and stuff. So he's been really trying. He's got a very artistic eye and a very artistic mind, and that's definitely been like his.
Yeah, he left us and went to Franklin Park Conservatory and did a few years there and learned a lot more, and then came back as a
Oh,
full-time horticulturist.
excellent.
So like we saw that full circle. So
Yeah,
Well, one of the speakers on Thursday, Preston Montague, super talented landscape architect, but his original degree is in fine arts,
Yeah.
and then he did a degree in horticulture,
Yep.
and his master's in landscape architecture.
Okay.
So he's really differentiated from many landscape architects who don't know plant material very
Yeah.
well. And his artistry is really what makes his design so unique and effective, and it's really exciting that he's giving a talk here.
Yeah.
Just the world of the PPA needs to know that there are landscape architects that actually are passionate about plants. They often get kind of categorized as glorified civil engineers.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
And they do have a lot of responsibility with regard to like water flow and flooding and
Yeah,
walls not collapsing.
And banking and
yeah.
That is beyond the plant
Right.
dynamic.
yeah.
But the plants are
Good.
what make
I'm gonna
it
star that.
It
interesting.
is,
Looking forward to that.
absolutely. And you're right. Like, there are landscape architects that have, like, horticulture background and know plants, but then I know some that have the most lame
That no
plant
40
palette
plants.
in the world, and it's just like, okay, like, you could find something better than, like, a celador or a daylily, right? So, like, let's work on this. But,
It's the plant widget
yeah.
conundrum.
absolutely.
Yeah. At least see here at PPA, we're not the weirdos because everyone here is obsessed with plants.
Yeah, I know. Like,
That's why we need to have these meetings.
yeah, so
we
that
can
we're
all
like,
be like, okay, yeah,
not
we're
as
normal.
weird as we thought we
yeah,
were.
we're
Yeah,
totally normal.
So that's great. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to look through some of the questions that we had wrote down here. So you talked about the youth some. So there were some people on the bus with us yesterday that were like, "Oh, you're going to interview Brie," and we're like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Ask her if she still has like some sort of an endorsement with the shoe company."
Yes.
Oh yeah, we had
Okay,
and I
so-
remember that. I remember when the shoes were huge. I haven't
Yeah.
seen as much about the shoes lately.
They're on right now. I'm wearing them.
Yes, they are.
Oh, nice.
Shout out to Charleston Shoe Company.
Okay.
First of all, fabulous woman-owned business.
Great.
Based out of Charleston, South Carolina. Machine washable, which is what I was originally motivated by.
Yeah.
Super durable. I've hiked Mount Pisgah in these sandals with people making fun of me until they saw me at the top.
And
they
they're
were
like, "Oh,
well,
wow. Yeah. Okay."
They're the most versatile. They're stylish. So I think I started wearing these very shortly after I started my business. And the shoes made me look fashionable. I'm not a fashionable person.
Oh, come on.
No,
You look
I'm not.
Wonderful.
No, the
Okay.
shoes just elevated it.
Gotcha.
It was a really funny, like I give them all the credit because I'm like, I've just learned that you wear solid colors with a really good pair of shoes, and everybody thinks that you are so on top of things.
That's awesome.
And so, yes, I adore these shoes. I recommend them. They make boots for winter. They have rain boots.
Oh, wonderful.
I don't wear anything but
Charleston
Shoe
Shoe
Company.
Company. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
So Charleston Shoe Company.
And they have great online, but they have 32 stores nationwide,
Okay.
mostly coastal environments, so it's like a good excuse. My good friend Jared Barnes, who's also here, he sent me a picture a few days ago because he was in Martha's Vineyard, and he's like, Brie, your shoe company's here. I'm like, I know, I got my turquoise shoes from that store.
That's fantastic.
Because everybody needs turquoise shoes.
Okay.
Yeah, right?
I agree. That's one of my favorite colors.
Yeah, turquoise is definitely one of your favorite colors.
Turquoise on my shoes.
Yes.
So, I want to get back to plants for just a sec. If I know that I do a lot of perennial gardening, but I also do a lot of annuals and perennials in containers around the city we work. I'm kind of in charge of that downtown area. If you could give us 1 or 2 or 3 of the best Foodscape Revolution type plants to use in a container in an urban area, what would those be?
For low maintenance, okay, so I'm going to give you a couple answers, because sometimes in urban areas, like harvesting fruit isn't that practical because you have human interaction.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
not always safe, but eggplants and peppers are my favorite for container, like an element with, coleus and plectranthus and lantana, pentas. I'm really liking the Savola a lot. For me, petunias don't live, and Calibrachoa don't really live very long, and we're just too humid and too wet. But Savola has been a really good trailing element.
Yeah.
But I also like to use strawberries as a trailing element in pots because it helps reduce the amount of roly-polies that get into the fruit.
Okay.
I also do a lot with blueberries in containers because you have better control over the pH. Whereas in ground, you might struggle with pH rises.
Yeah, like the soil composition and stuff.
And, I do persimmons and pawpaws as tree elements in containers, particularly the pawpaws because they sucker so abundantly. But in a pot, they're easier to manage and you don't end up with a huge grove.
So these would be like in much larger. Yeah, clearly. But
I do like the idea of blueberries for the fall we switch these out 4 times a year, but for the fall theme as blueberries for centerpieces with the fall color.
The fall color is beautiful.
And, for non-fruiting edibles, grains, hands down, grains need more attention. Particularly if you have pots that either don't have drainage holes or don't drain well. Rice is a really good thriller element for the summertime because it's upright. Particularly the purple leaf varieties like Black Madras is a great alternative to the purple fountain grass, and it doesn't collapse with rainstorms.
But the rice, it would need really consistent moisture.
Wet. Yeah. I typically grow rice in pots with no drainage.
Okay.
And then you put mosquito dunks in to prevent mosquito larvae from forming. But sorghum is a really good element. And it gets really tall, and then the birds eat the seeds. So for urban planting, you can then get this birding element, which I think people are really intrinsically motivated by.
Like in our community, we're in a town, Dublin, Ohio, and I don't know if you're familiar with Dublin, but there is like a lot of people that are very interested in birding in Dublin. There's a lot of birding groups that come out, especially on and along the Scioto River, but we're also one of the stops for the National Bluebird Trail or whatever. So there is a big birding community.
There is,
So like thinking about that, sometimes it's something that we don't often think about. It's more just like, we want this to look good for the people, that are in these spaces, but like, how can it also look good and be beneficial? Yeah.
So I have got a plant that you can't live a happy life without growing at least once in these pots, and that is sesame. So you seed sesame directly in the pot. So this would be something you would do in June. It's starting to bloom now. It looks just like a foxglove.
Okay.
It blooms all summer. And then every flower turns into a seed pod, and you get hundreds of thousands of sesame seeds. And, that's it's a plant that basically everyone's eaten. If you've eaten a hamburger bun,
you've had sesame. Yeah.
But most people have never grown it. They've never seen it. It's highly ornamental. Normal people wouldn't know that it's an edible. They would just assume it's something ornamental. But then the birds come and eat the seeds in the fall, especially like the goldfinches and things. And it's extraordinary. And, it's a plant native to India, so it does really well through the heat and humidity of the summer.
Yeah.
It's really very low maintenance, doesn't have a lot of disease pressure. Everybody needs to grow sesame at least once in their life.
There you go.
I'll send you
Sesame
seed.
next year.
I starred that, and I hope you heard that, listeners.
Yeah.
I will send you
Sesame.
seed. I am forcing it on you.
Okay.
Perfect.
I like to do sorghum, sunflowers, and sesame together as like a grow your own bird seed combo.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
cool. I mean, we could sit here. I know Tim and I could sit here and talk for hours, but we don't want to do that. I want to hit one more thing with you, and it's something that I have been more interested in recently, and that is like soil amendments.
yes.
And I have seen your stuff on the Soil 3 company. You're kind of like an ambassador for them, or you're endorsed by them. I don't know what the
am.
yeah. And I think it's fantastic. I've read about it. I'm like, I need some of that in my garden.
The only disadvantage is that it's not available nationwide.
Yeah.
And that's because of how heavy it is. It's just sort of cost prohibitive.
Yeah,
And
Tim's taking pictures.
for us in the Southeast, our soils are really depleted. I live in
Yeah.
a former tobacco field that is nothing but sand.
Okay.
So keeping organic matter in, keeping nutrients, holding moisture is really challenging. And I had bought a lot of offsite substrates in the past that were filled with weed seeds,
Yes.
had
Yep.
disease issues. So I really, when I discovered them, like I saw them at a trade show and I dipped my hands in this black cake mix, magic compost, and I was like, fell deeply in love.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need this by the truckload, you
Yeah.
know, and it's been a wonderful partnership.
Great.
I really am proud to work with them because they stand behind their product, and when they have issues, you know, the compost world is very much like the Wild West. It's totally unregulated.
Yeah.
And now because desiccant herbicides are so commonly used on grains that animals eat, they are still active in the manure that is what the compost is created from.
Yep.
Oh, I did not know that.
It's an aminopyralid issue that's really, you know, it's everywhere. It's so broad, and it's diving deep into this. It definitely made me realize like how not black and white the world is,
Yeah.
how there's good and bad to everything, and you just have to take these challenges and come up with solutions. And with SoilCube, they have soil scientists on staff, but they work with the land-grant universities to be able to overcome that and eliminate any trace herbicide by adding activated charcoal. And what I really appreciate about them is they want this information to be shared so other compost suppliers can do the
Yeah.
same to prevent that dreaded, you plant everything and then everything looks like it has been sprayed with Roundup, and it hasn't. It's herbicide that's still active in the compost.
Yeah, and I know like we get a lot of people, and I've never thought about that because in my mind it's always just like, oh, it's too hot. You know, like it was way too high in nitrogen. You didn't let it sit long enough and kind of leach out, and you just planted right into it. I work part-time at a local greenhouse and bulb supplier in Marysville, Ohio, and we sell the it's called Zoo Brew, which is like the Columbus Zoo's compost or whatever. And we've had people that have come back and have said like, oh, I planted into this and it just everything died. And I never even thought that, you know, that would
Could
be a thing.
Issue.
So
like, in our like
yeah.
in the olden days, the good old days, it was typically that it wasn't aged enough.
Okay.
But really, aminopyralids came out in 2006.
Okay.
And in the near 20 years of their inception and use, the dynamic of compost and how to create compost and then these persistent herbicides that are now present everywhere. Obviously, DOT is spraying them. The electric companies are spraying them. Farmers are using them.
Yep.
So it's much bigger. It's a much bigger dynamic. They're safer than what used to get sprayed, but then you're applying it to your garden.
Yeah.
And you have you have a more personal, you feel like the world is ending.
Yeah.
The bottom line is when you have killer compost, you feel like you have to give up.
Yeah.
And it's a really important conversation for more people to have and make more people be aware of it. And, you know, with SoilCube, their original product was created for turf. And turf is not susceptible to persistent herbicides.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a problem. It wasn't until they got into the vegetable growing space that they had to become more aware of these problems. And the addition of ground-aged pine bark, wood fiber, and the activated charcoal has really differentiated their veggie mix from basically any other compost that exists. And like I said, I'm hopeful that maybe at some point they will get national distributions. I hate bragging about it too much on YouTube
because people
half
can't
of
get
the
it.
Viewers can't access it.
Yeah, I
And
know,
I'm like-
because I looked into it and I was like, well, it's not available to me, but like, it still is interesting because it's like, why can't we have more of this? Whether it be with Soil Cube or why can't some of the other local composters like that we have in Central Ohio, like why aren't they doing the same sort of thing or holding their product to the same standard?
Well,
'cause
and I
we
think
have-
that's the goal that that Soil Cube has set out.
Yeah.
Is to lead by example and hopefully literally clean up the compost industry.
Wonderful,
So that
yeah.
consumers have a more reliable product.
Yeah. Because I know you were talking about your depleted soil. We are just super heavy clay in Central Ohio, and it's horrible, so not all of the time.
Is there anyone that just loves the soil they have?
No, in gardening, we have a couple of things that we are universally allowed to complain about.
And that's soil?
is number one, because you're never going to be satisfied with what you
Yeah.
have. We're also allowed to complain about weather no matter what,
Yep.
because it's always too hot, too cold, too dry, too wet,
Too wet,
too
yeah.
windy, too humid.
Yeah.
We are allowed to complain.
Wonderful.
That's our God-given right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you.
So wonderful, cool. So yeah, that a lot of good information there.
As we wrap up, I wanted to make sure that we also repeated the names of the books, The Foodscape Revolution and Gardening with Grains.
Yeah,
And they are available on my website, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
I'm working on a new edition of the Foodscape
wonderful,
Revolution.
perfect.
That
Because
was
we were just
that was-
talking today, like we got to ask her if there's anything in the works.
I'm excited. I'm not excited. Turns out I don't enjoy writing books.
Yeah.
I much prefer being outside in my garden.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try and get it done in August so
Awesome.
that it would have a 2025 release date. And we're really revising. I'm rewriting 6 whole chapters and have a whole chapter on a deep dive on container foodscape.
Oh, awesome.
I think that is actually the place for people to start and the place for people to end.
Yeah.
As you get into retirement, you don't need to manage as much space. You
Yep.
don't need to grow as much. I'm using my parents as a perfect example. And they're really enjoying their patio gardening.
Yeah, my mom's the same. My parents are in their late 70s, and my mom's like, everything's container. Like, she'll have like petunias or whatever. She loves her red geraniums, whatever it may be. And then, there'll be like a tomato plant, in a pot, or a pepper plant, like a little salsa garden, cilantro growing. But absolutely.
Great. And herbs are also, I've always said herbs are the gateway to foodscaping, because most people are growing herbs
Yeah.
in their conventional landscape. So it's just
One
getting
way
the
or another,
vegetables,
yeah.
that one extra thing. But I'm also, we bought that property next door. We run it as an Airbnb and offer gardening experiences for people. And I'm building out an all natives garden, which is
cool.
a completely new plant palette for me. I specialized in Asian native broadleaf evergreens,
Wow.
just to be super specific, you
Yeah.
know. And learning about the native plants and the good and the bad, I've made a lot of mistakes in building the garden. But I'll have a whole chapter on foodscaping with natives, which is
Love
something
it.
that when I wrote the original book, I had no experience
Yeah,
with.
wasn't even thinking about it.
So I'm really excited to get to share new information. And, again, like I'm gardening differently now than I was 10 years ago. I anticipate that 10 years from now,
Yeah.
my pace will be different.
That's what's beautiful
and it's
about
really
gardening
fair to
now.
acknowledge.
Yeah,
you know.
Evolution, change is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and some years you have more time and other years you have less time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I feel like this has been a year for me where it's like, I just feel like I can't get ahead of anything for me personally.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's one of the years for me.
And listeners, if you want to follow Brie on Instagram, it's at Brie the Plant Lady.
I am also Brie the Cat Lady.
And Brie the Cat Lady.
Correct. I wanted to get into that today, but we're not going to have time. But so also follow Brie the Cat Lady, especially if you're a cat in the garden lover.
And follow her on YouTube. I mean, you've got like 30,000 subscribers almost on YouTube, which is
exciting.
insane. Yeah.
You know, I owe it all to Jim Putnam, who is the amazing creator of HortTube. He lives in Raleigh. He really encouraged me when the pandemic hit and all of my speaking engagements got canceled.
To get into YouTube.
Brie, you've got information that people want. Just get over your fear of talking to yourself through your cell phone. And I'm so grateful that he gave me that encouragement. I really enjoy making YouTube
and there are
videos.
those,
and we love
those
them too.
videos are fun.
They're not staged. They're off. They're generally not planned.
Yeah.
We're just really trying to show people that you can spend 15 or 20 minutes a day interacting in your garden, and it's a hobby. That you're supposed to do that. That's what you do for hobbies. It's not a chore. It's never called yard work. We never use the W word.
No, it's gardening.
It's gardening, and it keeps you in shape, and I don't know. There's just so many benefits to it.
For me,
for your mind,
me personally, mental health is a huge thing that in this world that's being brought to the forefront for a lot of people. I suffer from mental health issues, so for me, like the anxieties and things, like being in the garden is a way for me to like meditate, relax, get rid of those anxieties. It's like my happy place. So it's very meditative to me.
I agree 1,000%. And you get something accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I have a dear friend who runs marathons, and I keep she's like, you need to get all these knee replacements and stuff because she's just like, abused herself. I'm like, you just need to get into gardening and you actually get to eat from your effort.
Yeah.
You
get exercise, you get to eat. I mean, just
the satisfaction of being creative.
Yeah, being creative.
I mean, I think part of the reason that I gravitate as a home gardener to annuals is that I get to recreate the spaces over and over again.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love knowing that, like,
I do too.
Next year, even if I tried to do the same planting, it would never look the same.
I've done that before where it's like, all right, it's been 5 years. I'm going to try this again. And then I'm like, why the hell did this not work out like it did 5 years ago? But here we are. So, yeah, that's fantastic. But cool. Well,
this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So much for
well, thanks for agreeing to be on this.
I know this is very busy for you because we're in your home state and there's a lot of people that want to talk to you and a lot of classes you need to get to, and we totally appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Well, you are so welcome, and it has been a joy. And, y'all just need to come down and stay in my extra house.
Airbnb.
Have some proper garden time.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Absolutely. So that
But
sounds
don't worry,
fantastic.
I'll hook you up with tomatoes today.
Okay.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yep.
So
thank you, Brie Arthur. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yep. So, and thank you to the listeners.
Yep.
And,
thank you. And we love you.
I guess that's it. So peace, love, and gardening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.